Welcome back to 755 is Real. I'm adjusting the backdrop here so I don't get a lot of glare here in San Diego. I'm David O'Brien, Braves writer at The Athletic. I'm with my co-host, Eric O'Flaherty, former Braves reliever. What's up, Eric?
Not much. San Diego's looking good.
Yeah, we've had a marine layer going for 2 days since I got here. I got a great view. You just can't see it because of the glare, but it's all the flight pattern of it's right in front of the airport, and all the planes go right in front of this building.
Nice.
But anyway, yeah, it's pretty cool. I don't know if it's helping. Anyway, well, we got a big series coming up against the Padres because of what San Diego did in Atlanta just over a week ago, won 3 out of 4. And as it turns out, the Braves have only lost one other game all year so far. They're 12
That's
and 4.
pretty crazy, isn't it?
Right. And it's not like the Padres are hot either. I mean, the Padres are 8-9, but they won that series in convincing fashion. Braves didn't play very good ball, but I think it kind of woke them up because they've played great since then against a couple of teams. We talked about that 6-game stretch, how they needed to win 5. It was unrealistic to expect sweeps. Well, they swept them both, Cincinnati and Kansas City.
Yeah, and I think you get credit for that. I mean, if you go and beat up on some teams that are in the phases they're in and you go 4-2, maybe you don't get a lot of credit, but a sweep's a sweep. And if you double up, it's hard for any team to do that against, a rebuilding, torn down team. You play 6 games against 2 teams like that, you're normally losing at least 1 or 2.
Yeah. Normally in one of those type stretches, you face like the one team has one really good pitcher and he goes like 7 great innings and your guy gets roughed up a little bit. You lose one game like that, but neither of those teams has a really dominant pitcher. Hunter Green might be someday, but he's not yet.
Yep.
Great stuff, obviously. Greinke's not what he was. So they really didn't have any of those guys to really dominate a game. Meanwhile, the Braves have a kind of even though they've had a couple of key relievers, we've talked about this, have been out, they've still got that security blanket of knowing their relievers can, if you're a starter, they need to be yanked in the 4th inning. Your relievers can give you 5 quality innings every night.
And quite a few guys can go multiple.
Any night you need them to.
Yeah. It's more like how they used to build American League bullpens before you got rid of the DH, and now everybody's kind of trying to do that. And those guys that can go 2 1/3 or 1 2/3, clean up an inning and go out and give you another one. They're without a DH, man. With the DH, they're extremely valuable.
Yeah, and and we talked about like Tonkin, for instance, was not giving up anything. Well, he gives up a 2 spot yesterday, which brings us to the biggest key strength of this team so far, the offense. This offense can go down a couple of runs, and it is nothing. They can make it up in a half inning just like that because they got so many guys that can go deep, so many guys that can double you to the gap. Right now, it's been a while since I've seen the Braves have so many guys going at once, and that's without Darno in the lineup.
Yeah.
Murphy playing about every day, either catching DH one game. And without Michael Harris, who was the NL runner of the NL Rookie of the Year. So Sam Hilliard has really stepped in and done a good job in center field.
That guy, when I watch him play, if I'm waiting for AA to throw him some kind of deal because he just looks like a ball player.
He does, doesn't he?
Doesn't he look just super athletic?
6'5", 225, 230. It can run.
Move. Yeah. Good swing.
He's doing it on both sides because he's made some great catches out there. He's got a good arm. Got good speed. He's showing he can hit. So between him doing that, Eli White just had a couple of big hits. They're doing what they're doing, like I said, without Darno and without Ozuna doing anything because they keep running him out there almost every day. And so far, he's been terrible. But they have so many other guys that it's kind of like when you used to carry a shortstop who couldn't hit or a backup catcher who can't hit. That's what you're getting from Ozuna. But you don't have a backup catcher who can't hit. You don't have a shortstop who can't hit.
And you don't have a pitcher spot.
Exactly. So if you get 6 guys out of 9 that are raking at once, you're going to have a hell of an offense, and that's what they've got right now.
Yeah, it's like you look at how they've started, and the offense has been crazy, and they're not going to keep that up. And if they do, they're going to win 120 games.
Right.
If you hit like this all season with a decent pitching staff, Wright came out, he came out a little late, and Fried got hurt, and it really hasn't phased them because of the way they've hit, missing a reliever, but pretty soon the rotation is going to get up to full strength and you get Iglesias back. And, this is what's so great about this team is if the offense starts to struggle, they still have such a great pitching staff. They're going to keep winning games. But when they hit like this, I don't know who's beating them.
Yeah, their bullpen and the offense carried them early. while they could piece together this rotation. But now you got Kyle Wright back, and his second start looks so much better yesterday than it did in the first. And now the big one is tonight you get Max Fried back, who got hurt on opening day, hamstring pull, and tonight's his first start since then. So you get that rotation back to what you had projected, and with Elder pitching beyond expectations.
Yep.
Soroka waiting in the wings, making some starts in AAA.
How's he been looking?
He pitched pretty well in his first one. Our first couple, yeah, he pitched pretty well. He's looked good. He's making progress. So
that's good.
Yeah, I mean, your offense obviously is probably not going to compete performing like this. So, but you could have a little slippage once you get, and you're going to get Iglesias, your best reliever's not even pitched yet. Him and Mitch are your best relievers, and so far you haven't had him, and you've had one of your 3 or 4 best relievers, and Colin McHugh's been out, so he'll be back soon too. Harris probably maybe a week away, maybe back for maybe shorter than that, maybe back for the Houston series. So, would
you say that the Braves are up there in that Dodgers, Astros
for sure
category now? I mean, they're right there.
Absolutely, one of the super teams, quote unquote.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I would say right now, I don't know how you can't say that they are. They're 12-4 record, second best in the majors. Tampa Bay's 14-2 after that 13-0 start. Braves 6-0 against teams from Missouri, by the way, St. Louis and Kansas City.
Okay, I don't know what that means, if it means much, but it's better than not being 6-0
right.
against them.
Yeah, you're beating up the teams that you should beat up, and then St. Louis is a pretty good team, man, and you swept them at their place. So
at their place.
Right. I mean, the only blip you've even had is the San Diego series.
And they're good.
You know? And the Padres played a lot better in that series than they've played most of the time since then. So we'll see. Tonight, the great thing is, people talk about how weird it is they're playing the Padres twice in the first, in a span of just over a week. You're going to be done with the Padres for the rest of the year. Well, while that is weird, and I know Braves don't want to say, no, we want to beat them at full strength. You'd rather not face them when Tatis is there because he is raking in AAA. He's going to be activated Thursday,
right after they leave right center. That ball hit to right center yesterday. Oh my God.
He'll be back from his PED suspension, and the Braves are going to face them 7 games without him. And you also get Joe Musgrove back in that rotation probably by the end of the week, so you face them without him. So you need.
I'd rather not face any team at full strength if I don't have to.
Yeah, take advantage, man. You got 3 games here. Win the series. Not saying sweep them, but win the series, and you go home in great shape before you face the Astros.
If they win the World Series, or if they win the series, that's a 8-1 trip.
Yeah. No, this was a 6-game trip. If they win the series, it'll be a 5-1 trip.
Oh, they just started on the road. I was thinking they already they played in Cincinnati for some reason.
Yeah, they played in they played the Reds at home. Yeah. They have not played in Cincinnati yet. So. So you get the Padres now. You'll be done with them. They're going to be a lot better by the end of the year. Who knows? These teams might meet in the postseason. Padres are a lot better than their 8-9 record. We know that. They're 5-5 in their past 10, 4-6 at home. But once they get Tatis, that batting order gets a whole lot better. Soto's starting to hit now a lot better. So, you want to get them now if you can. And then the Astros come to town, and they're not clicking on all cylinders yet either, and they don't get Altuve back probably till June from the broken thumb. You
know what? I was happy. Gaddis kind of went on a Twitter rant a week ago or so, but I was happy that he said, and I don't think he would have had any reason to lie because he was being truthful with everything else, that Altuve wouldn't even wanted the signs because he's such a great player, and that really taints his legacy thinking he cheated. Right.
I talked to Charlie Morton about the same thing, and he didn't get all indignant or anything. He just said, if you know Altuve, you know that what they're saying about him is not fair. I mean, they have total respect for Altuve. And
he's handled it well.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd be on I'd be trying to defend myself and coming out and saying I didn't do it every day. He's kind of just let the thing fizzle out.
Unlike Correa, because he tried to and it backfired and made him look worse. Altuve's been smart and not said anything.
Yeah.
He knows that eventually, and he plays another 5-10 years
and keeps doing the same thing.
It's not gonna. It's gonna be a blip on his. It's not gonna stain. It's not gonna be Jose Altuve, who played for the. It's not gonna be that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at it, what they did as a team was horrible. Yeah, we don't know each individual player, but I do know that Altuve is a great player, and that 1 year is not going to stain his whole Hall of Fame career. To me,
Right.
it's not like he was ever accused of stealing, cheating signs for the first however many years he's played. And look at his numbers.
Yeah,
So,
and he always seemed like a reactive hitter in the box. It
right.
didn't seem like a guy sitting there waiting for something he was looking for. It was like the first strike he sees, he's hacking, and he can hit everything.
I think even like with McCann, who kept silent the whole time, and we wondered if that was the right way to do it. We probably thought he should have came out like Gaddis and just said it. But I think it's starting to fade with him too, because you see him like on coaching on D-Rose staff at the WBC. You're not hearing people talk about the Astros and the cheating right now.
Right.
And if they know McCann, they know.
Yeah, he's not that guy.
No. So, okay. So you got Max Fried coming tonight in the series opener. I'm interested because he's coming back from the hamstring strain. He did not do a rehab start, but he faced live pitching. He pitched in a sim game. And I think in guys like in the case of him, it's so early in the season. It's only 15 days. I think they look at it as he's a mature enough guy as a pitcher. He knows what he's doing. Really don't need to run him out there in a AAA start when we can have him face some hitters here. Is that the way they look at this? You do agree with that?
I would think so. I mean, Max is, he's still so young to think of as like a salty vet.
Yeah.
But he's been an ace for a while, and he's at the point now where if he says he doesn't need it, and it's not like it was an arm injury where you need to go test your arm. It's a hamstring. If
he kept his arm going the whole time.
Kept his arm going, then it's just like a long layoff. I mean, there's starters that either get skipped or start, the fifth day before the All-Star break, and then the All-Star break happens, and then they get lined up in the back. They don't go on the DL, and they miss almost 2 weeks. So for me, if he says he's ready at the point in his career that he's at, and knowing his character, it's like one thing if you got a guy that's known to be lazy and not work hard and not take care of himself, and he's probably just drinking on the DL.
Yeah.
And icing his arm or whatever, then you're kind of like, we want to send him out. But they've also had the luxury of being able to watch him throw the whole time. He's probably not going to look rusty.
Yeah. And I think it was a case of if we have him go out and make a AAA start, once he was cleared to do like cover first base and those kind of things, then it was really ramped up and got here in a hurry. So if they'd had to make a AAA start, it would have been pushing it to have him get in the Padres series because he was only cleared to cover first base 5 days ago, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So
and might burn a good start out of him. If he goes down there and throws 7 shutouts, like you could have had that in the big leagues.
Yeah, you wasted it. Yeah, I think that's a way to look at it too. So it's probably a wise decision. I mean, now you get him to kick off things in this important series, kind of set the tone if he goes out and pitches well. And he's obviously been cleared, and it was a hamstring. It wasn't a tear or anything off the bone. It was a relatively minor thing that if it had been late in the season or postseason, he would have kept pitching.
Yeah, so. And this early, your mindset is something's nagging somebody that important. Let's just get it right, and we got all season to make up for it.
So, Max, the important thing to remember, we talked about this at the time when he did this, and he did it covering first base in the fourth inning of opening day at DC in the cold there, chilly, windy. We talked about how the timing was so similar to when he did this 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And went on the 15-day DL. That was April 2021. He was on the IL that year for 3 weeks, about a week longer than this year, or 4 days longer, something like that. And if you recall, he had gotten off to a rough start that year, had a couple of really bad starts, and it was kind of a reset for him. So while he was out with that hamstring injury, he kind of figured some things out in his delivery and all that. And he came back, and he was lights out. So that one worked out well for him. I don't know if he'd have been able to make those adjustments pitching every 5 days, but he came back and it was night and day that year. So
I think anytime you get a chance to throw without pressure, and kind of sometimes there's an adjustment you want to make, and it's going to take 2 or 3 bullpens. You know it's an adjustment you got to make, but you can't really take it into a game yet. You only get 1 or 2 between your starts. You get to give a guy that chance to kind of tinker a little bit, as good as Max is, and usually they come back better.
He had gone. He had a 6.35 ERA in his first 3 starts in 2021 before that injury. Right. He had given up 12 runs, 17 hits in his last 2 starts before the IL. Then was activated, immediately began one of the best stretches of his career. went 14-6, 2.44 ERA in his remaining 25 starts, including 17 Braves wins. And after the All-Star break that year, he led the league or led the majors in ERA, like 1.77 after the All-Star break that year. So,
yeah, that was a nice year for him.
All right. We talked about that offense, some specifics. Dude, I couldn't believe this when I looked this up last night on the qualified players in the majors. In the National League, the Braves now have, after Sean Murphy's unbelievable week, Sean Murphy, they have 5 of the top 23 NL players, qualified players in OPS, 3 of the top 9. It's a 15-team league. Sean Murphy's third at 1,097. Matt Olson is 5th at 1,069. Ronald Acuna Jr. is 9th at 1,022. You got 3 of your 9 lineup regulars, OPS and over 1,000 with 1/10 of the season down. Austin Riley is 19th at 925. You know he's going to move up.
Yep.
He's not doing anything out of the ordinary. 925 is what he does.
Yeah.
And Orlando Arcia, still ranked. He'll drop off the qualifieds because he's not going to have plate appearances in another few days probably. But he was at 911 before he got hurt.
I guess Arcia is the only guy that, you would consider a surprise. The rest of the guys, it's like you said, they're just doing what they do.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's a good thing when you see a stat like that is it's something you could expect from each guy. It's not some guy playing out of his mind that you're expecting to fall off.
Right. Sean Murphy just had an extraordinary 5 days. You're not expecting that. But the point is, we talked about it, how many home runs he hit with Oakland as his home ballpark.
Yeah.
And we said when he came over, if he played as much here, because he caught, last year like 115 games, 118 games, and DH 30 games. We said if he plays even close to what he played in Oakland, for the Braves with the ballpark, fair ballpark, this is a 30 home run guy.
Yeah.
He's legit 25, 30 home run guy easily.
Night games in Oakland, the ball just doesn't. You get it out in a day game. Yeah. If you hit a home run in Oakland at night, there's no luck to it.
Huge ballpark and the atmosphere.
Yeah, atmosphere is tough. For me, I can't stand it because there's barely any fans, and then you have the fans that do show up. They all bring instruments.
You can hear every one of them.
Every
instrument, every yelling fan.
It's quiet enough stadium where the fans can actually talk to you during the game.
Yeah,
I don't ever like that. I like white noise.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's tough to day games there are tough to get up for. I think he's really going to like Atlanta.
So Sean Murphy's second week, how good was it with the Braves? It was one of the best that any hitter has ever had in the franchise history. That's how good it was. He had 2 doubles and a homer Saturday. It made him the second Braves player in history to have at least 9 extra base hits in a 5-game span. And the other wasn't Hank Aaron. It was Joe Adcock, who's a Braves Hall of Famer. He had 10 extra base hits in a 5-day span in 1954.
And it doesn't even stand out because everybody else is doing so much.
Right.
That's why it's shocking. Because if you're carrying an offense, then you're aware of it and you're expecting some crazy stat like that. But with how they've been hitting, it just kind of blends in.
Yeah. Arfies has that week with Oakland last year. Everybody's going to go, man, Oakland sucks. But have you seen what Sean Murphy's doing?
Yeah, it's easier to stand out in different lineups.
Now it's just, oh, man, Oakland sucks.
Yeah.
No buts to it. They just suck. God, he's got to look at that. That's the only organization he was ever with. He keeps up with them every day and goes,
yeah,
oh, my God, I'm so happy to be on a contending team, playing in front of packed houses. They sold out all 4 games in that Padres series, which was kind of the unfortunate part of losing 3, other than losing 3, which is also unfortunate. But they sold out every game. And that was a wraparound series, man. It started like a Thursday, not wraparound, it was Thursday through
Friday.
Sunday.
Yeah, Thursday.
They sold out all of them, though. And then they had 35,000 for a freaking Reds game on a Monday night with school in session, which back in the day, until a few years ago, that recipe in Atlanta on a chilly night, too, that's 12,000 people in the seats most.
Yeah, they're getting to really see how much that traffic and stadium location was holding them back.
Yeah, and how much winning consistently helps.
Yeah, for sure. If you suck, you're not pulling that. But
yeah, winning, man. Fans that argue that you get a better product and you get more people there by spending money. It's true. It's just that you've got to make that commitment. Is it chicken and egg and all that, Because if you win,
well, look at San Diego.
Ideally, you win without spending the money. Then you start spending the money, but that's hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
So a team like San Diego, that commits before they actually start getting the fans there is paying off for them because right now they're 8-9, but they're drawing great crowds. I mean,
and they're going to be good. They're not going to keep playing like that.
So anyway, he the thing that stood out to me though too, in addition to his unbelievable 5-game span, that Sean Murphy. I pointed this out when the Braves got it because when Snit was talking about DHing the catcher who's not playing that day behind the dish, DHing him. I looked up Murphy's numbers and I was shocked at how mediocre or bad his numbers were as a DH last year compared to his numbers as a catcher. And, a one-season deal can be fluky, short, small sample size and everything. But it wasn't that small a sample size. And some guys talk about how they're so much into the game, so much better hitter when they're playing. And not thinking about that one at bat and getting all geeked up, and aiming everything. Some guys it works. Some guys can do it and learn to do it great. Like Sandoval was here, for the while he was doing it great. And Nelson Cruz.
Yep.
Other guys never really adapt to it and just never really become a good DH. Chipper never wanted to, even the interleague games, he preferred to play.
Yeah. There's definitely something to that. I mean, it's almost the benefit of distraction. Yeah, I mean, you're so focused on all this other stuff that you just go up and compete and hit when it's your turn to hit. When you strike out in your first at bat and you got 3 innings to think about that, it's so much of it. So much focus comes on this one thing, and the only way to have a good day is to hit.
Yeah.
If you strike out in your first at bat as a catcher, you go throw somebody out. Now you got good vibes. You've contributed. So I think there's certain guys that I think everybody can do it, but the guys that struggle, they need an adjustment period to be a DH, and a lot of the really good DHs, they're not guys that are doing both. They're not getting to feel what it's like to be engaged the whole game and come back. They're, for the most part, just adapting to that DH role.
And I wonder also about DHing in cold weather. There you go. You get a little bit better view of this. And I wonder also about DHing in a place where you play most of your games in a chilly climate, like Oakland, not cold, but chilly. It's got to be easier when you're in a warm place and you're not cooling down, have to warm up again for your bat and all that. Something else.
Well, just keeping a lather. Yeah, I mean, in Atlanta, you can just jog 2 wind sprints and you're sweating.
Especially in another few weeks. But, it's already got warm there. So, anyway, looked it up. And last year, he hit 269 with 16 homers and 805 OPS in 116 games. That's 481 plate appearances as a catcher. 269, 805 OPS, 16 homers. As a catcher, that's damn good as a catcher. As a DH, 30 games, 129 plate appearances last year. He had 179 with 2 homers and a 584 OPS. Now, I know that's not a huge sample size, but 30 games and 129 plate appearances is not tiny either. It's not a small sample size.
Yeah.
So then –
that's legit.
So then the reason I looked it up is because he has that incredible week that he just had. And he DHs on Sunday for the first time all year. First time he's DH'd. Darno was DHing when he wasn't catching before he got hurt. But Murphy has not until Sunday. Chadwick Trump got his first start behind a plate. Murphy DH'd. And after that unbelievable 5 days, he went 0-4 with 3 strikeouts Sunday as a DH. That's what made me think about it and look it up.
Yeah, it's different personalities too. Like Darno is like this no matter what. Like that dude's never high or low.
Yeah.
He's the same. Other guys, they feed off the energy of being in the game. Their body feels better when they're moving. There's a lot to it.
So it's going to be interesting to see. We're not going to see Murphy DH much at all until Darno gets back, certainly from the concussion IL. Murphy's going to play just about every day. But he DH'd Sunday in a day game after a night game, a rain-delayed night game. And it was cold, still, Sunday, and windy. So it made sense to DH him, try not push him too much early. But I would fully expect to see him catch all 3 games in San Diego, night games out here, and then probably every game against Houston, unless day game on Sunday. So, but anyway, it'll be interesting when Darno gets back, how often. And there's no timetable for him, by the way. People keep asking. And you hate saying no timetable, but with a concussion protocol, it's totally different than any of the others. because every day they examine him. Every day they have him do tests. I'm not sure what the tests are for concussion, but every day the doctors look at him. And until he passes those tests, that's not one of those injuries that you can push the envelope or whatever.
No.
Until he passes those tests, he does nothing.
Well, especially that there's a risk of having another one. And that's when it gets really,
and he's
really bad.
had 4 in his career.
Yeah, I never gave concussions a lot of credit. I thought, you're just like dizzy for a few days, until I talked in depth with David Ross. Had a pretty bad one in his career, and he was just talking about he couldn't even control his behavior. He'd get really angry for no reason. He wasn't even sure why. And he's pretty chill for the most part.
Yep.
He's intense when he's playing, but talking to him a lot about it made me really understand why concussions are so scary. Just the things he went through.
I mean, just look at. I know it's a different situation, but football players who've had multiple ones and they get that last one that proves to be too much, and you don't even know it at the time other than it's debilitating, but later in life, what it can do is just absolutely devastating. So, it's one good thing about developments, protocols in the last decade. All sports, they've been really, really totally different about concussions than they used to be. It used to be like, he's just soft, send him back out. No, they don't do that now. And teams know better. Because if you do it now with everything that's known about concussions and you skirt the rules to get a player back out there, and then something happens to that player, you open yourself up to massive lawsuits down the line because it's all out there now, and there are protocols in place. So
it's incredible the NFL can even keep functioning, with how scary concussions are.
Yeah, it looked like a few years ago when all these cases were coming out that football really was in peril, but it just goes to show how popular it is. Something that makes that much money is always going to survive, at least. Anyway,
my dad talks about it a ton. He talks about all the concussions and stuff, but he's still watching the 49ers on a Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. So Murphy, anyway, in that 5-day period, 9 for 19, 6 doubles, 3 homers, no singles, 11 RBIs, an absurd 1263 slugging percentage and 1847 OPS. Dude, that was unbelievable. While catching every game.
Yeah.
He's a hell of a player.
Especially getting off to a rough start a little bit,
Yeah. And I'm also glad to see Contreras is really doing well with Milwaukee. They love him. Yeah. They're talking about how well he's caught too, and how much he's learning, what a sponge he's been. So that's good to see. He's hitting up there, and when they got him, they didn't know how much he'd be a primary catcher, but they said no, he's playing great. So that's good. That's good. That's one of those trades that's going to work out for everybody, I think.
It's nice when that happens.
Yeah.
It's tough when you get a guy that comes over and sucks, and you're watching this guy take off. It keeps a lot of teams from making deals, but you're right. This one could be one that everybody's happy with.
So, given how early we are in the season, Murphy goes over 4 with 3 strikeouts Sunday. It dropped his average from 308 to 279 in one game. And his OPS, while it's still third best in the NL at 1,097, it had been 1199 before that game Sunday. So, Braves catchers still lead the majors with 14 RBIs, have the second best OPS at that position behind the Rockies. OPS, Braves are 914 Braves catchers. Rockies 944. Meanwhile, Braves DHs, primarily Ozuna, not just him, but primarily him, tied for 22nd in the majors with a 217 average, 666 OPS is 21st in the majors. And that would be considerably lower if it wasn't for d'Arnaud, who was damn good as the DH. He went 9 for 18 as DH, 2 doubles, 4 RBIs. All the other Braves in the DH role this season, I looked up this last night, the others, 4 for 42, 095 with 1 double, 2 homers, 2 RBIs, those on solo homers by Ozuna, 16 strikeouts. They are stinking at the DH other than d'Arnaud right now.
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt you really when you have a shortstop and a catcher hitting, because like you said, those are the positions you're kind of in the past. You'd throw out a guy that's hitting 220 but amazing shortstop, or you'd have a catcher that's lights out back there, but it's 230 with 10 homers and you're happy with it because he's so good behind the plate. Yeah. Having 2 guys at those prime defensive positions raking, you can handle a DH doing this for a little while longer.
Yeah, and obviously we've talked about it. Extraordinary circumstances. The guys, Ozuna's owed $37 million coming into the year, 18 each of these seasons, a $1 million buyout. As much as people would love for the Braves just to eat it and move on, that's not a decision that great businesses make lightly. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard to make that decision. That's a lot of money. I know we get so numb to the figures out there that it just seems like monopoly money. But that is $37 million on the bottom line, one way or the other. And if you do release him, and I know people say 2020 when he led the NL in home runs and RBIs, that was 3 years ago, and it was only a 60-game season. But he led the NL in homers and RBIs. He's not an old guy. If because he hit well in spring training, if you release him and he goes somewhere else, starts raking, it's egg on your face.
18, yeah.
So
and it's not like it's not like you look at him and it's his bat's slow.
Right.
He's just not squaring the ball up, but it's not like a physical thing. And I mean, it gets tough to be that guy, and it gets tough to watch it. But when it's that much money, and he's got so much talent, he's got so much raw power with the bat that it could click, and it's clicked in the past. And before he came to Atlanta, he had that season. I think it was with St. Louis.
Yeah.
It's
you almost in a postseason too in a series playoff series.
You get so scared to pull that trigger and watch him just take off with somebody else. But he could also be in that position where he's at with the Braves, and it's just the reset of going to a new team might do it. And then you can't fault the team for that, because at some point you realize you just think, well, it's not going to happen here. How long can you wait? But that's a really tough decision to make, and I'm glad I don't have to make it.
Right. And it's only, I know it feels like it's an eternity because he sucked the last 2 years while getting arrested twice. That just exacerbates everything, obviously.
Yeah.
If this guy had no arrest, it was a clean slate, and it was, the people really liked him, they would be much more forgiving right now. But it's a combination of him being bad on the field, doing some terrible things off the field, and allegedly he got arrested for him. And then that's a hard sell, I know, and I understand why people are booing it. That takes a lot for Braves fans to boo one of their own, but they have been doing it. But
I'd assume by him still being around. To his credit,
he's not flipping off anybody. He's not coming out saying afterwards, complaining. He understands.
He's wearing it.
Yeah, he's wearing it. If he starts hitting, it's still early, and you can carry that a little better in the DH role than you can in the outfield. They got out of the outfielders that are playing pretty well. He's not killing you out there. I'm not saying, you do it all season, but so far it's early. We're 1/10 of the way into the season.
Yeah. And it's, I'd understand. Well, I mean, I'm just assuming he's decent in the clubhouse and he's working hard.
He's fine in the clubhouse.
If the guy, if he was shutting down, and coach said he wanted to, get out there early or do some work, and he didn't want to do the work, I would think he'd be gone by now. But
just being an asshole. If people didn't like him in the clubhouse,
if he was a douche in the clubhouse,
all it would take was 3 or 4 players to tell him, get rid of this guy, and he'd be gone. Yeah. They would eat the money.
Yeah, if the players said we've had enough, then
he's killing us in the clubhouse and on the field, get rid of him. But they haven't said that. To my knowledge, he has not had any incidents in the clubhouse. He's been fine.
Right. Yeah.
He occasionally might have showed up a little late, but he's not the first veteran to do that. But he has not been a disturbance in the clubhouse at all, from what my understanding, what I've observed myself. So we'll see. We'll see how long it goes with it. It could happen tomorrow. It might not happen at all. The Braves might eat it for the whole year and decide in the winter, okay, that's it. We're not going to do this another year. They might do it at the trade deadline. They might get somebody to just pick up $5 million of what he's owed,
And you can get that from a hot couple of weeks going into the trade deadline.
Right. If somebody has a need, somebody has an outfield go down or a DH go down, and he happens to be on a week like Murphy just had, or he's had a couple of good weeks where he's hit 5 home runs, boom, you save yourself $10, $15 million just by waiting a little longer.
Yeah, you just float an article, float some info that he made this swing adjustment and how good he's feeling.
Yeah.
Somebody will bite.
So I don't like the insinuation there, but okay.
I'm just saying.
Kyle Wright, that was a huge development yesterday for him to come back and put that first one behind him. He said, and his teammates all said after the first one, and Snit said, they weren't worried at all. It was his first start. It really should have been the middle of spring training, given how few starts he had made at camp and then one minor league start. So they weren't worried at all. He's geeked up with the adrenaline going and all that. He walked a few guys, had one really bad inning. And he said, I'm not worried. Felt great coming out of my hand. The velo was there. He was going to talk to the mental performance guy during that week, figure out, get some back to doing some things he was doing. It all worked, and he looked great yesterday.
Yeah.
The numbers weren't off the charts, but it was much, much better, getting closer to himself. Gave up 2 runs, 5 2/3, struck out 6, walked 3. And really, if you think about it, these should have been the last couple of starts of his spring training. If he would have been in normal camp and hadn't missed several weeks with the shoulder issue after getting the cortisone injection in January.
Yeah. And, you know, at any time, for me in my career, opening day, you always had some nerves. And it didn't matter how much time I had. Anytime I went on the DL for a few weeks or you know, started the season late, there's an adjustment period to go from pitching these games that no matter how hard you try to focus, you know, deep down, they don't mean anything.
Yeah.
To, all right, it's real. And so anytime a guy does that, even Grissom, you know, with his errors in that first game back, it's like for him, that first game in the big leagues, you're going to have some nerves, and it's a thing now. You know, everybody's focused on his defense. Right. I would have been really surprised if he didn't have at least one play he flubbed up. But
right.
I don't judge guys those first couple coming off the DL, first game back or first game getting called up. You know, you like to let it sit for at least a week or two, you know, 2 starts out of a starter before you really start evaluating it, because there's always that extra bit of nerves no matter how long you've been in the game.
Yeah, we'll get to Grissom real quick. I thought the biggest thing I thought for Wright, he loads the bases with no outs in the 3rd inning, got a double play grounder, limited the damage to 1 run that inning. I thought that was huge. And that was what he does. Now that's
who we became. Yeah.
He said that was a big confidence booster for me going forward. I feel like I could have thrown the ball better, but I felt right, like we made pitches when we needed to. He says we instead of I sometimes. Stuff was good. Now we'll just continue to build and continue to grow outing after outing. But I feel like I'm in a much better position now to go and be consistent. Snit said, man, I thought that was really, really good. That was a big improvement over the last time. So that's big. I mean, that's the guy. Remember, he led the majors in wins last year, and it wasn't fluky. His low ERAs, low 3 ERA. So, I mean, he had 21 wins and 30 starts last year.
No, he's legit. There wasn't anything about last year that, you know, made me question anything of, is he here to stay? That was a coming out party.
Real solid. Is he an ace and number 1? No, probably not. But he's got great stuff, and he's a real solid middle of the rotation starter on a championship team.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have a hard time leapfrogging Max for ace, but
or even Strider if Strider keeps developing.
Right, there's some guys in front of him, but there's some teams where if he kept pitching like that, I mean, just the consistency alone is like let's give this guy the ball opening day.
If he pitched like he did last year, he would have been the ace on like 10 or 15 teams.
Yeah.
You know, but this team just happens to have Max Fried, who's one of the best 10 starters in the majors, and Spencer Strider, who's a freak.
Strikes out 27 per 9.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, having Kyle Wright as your number 3, there's very, very few teams that can look at that kind of quality depth.
And 3 is such a great spot to be in too. Yeah, I mean, you're not having to go up against the other team's aces, and there's not the pressure of being the ace. You know, you can just do your thing.
And if you exit after 5 or 6, make the bullpen go 3 or 4 innings, you got Charlie Morton coming up the next day.
And the bullpen's probably fresh because you just had Fried and Strider pitch.
Right. Vaughn Grissom, I thought he really looked good in the 3-game series against KC. I thought it was impressive. This is a guy that a lot of attention was played when he and Shoemake was paid to he and Shoemake when they were kind of staging this, what appeared to be a 2-man battle for shortstop at spring training. After going into spring training with Grissom and Arcia as a 2-man battle, Shoemake hit really well early. His defense stood out because he's a really good defensive player. And it just kind of the narrative developed, helped along by Snit saying we're going to take one of the 2 north, you know, between Grissom and Shoemake. That was a week before camp ended. He said that. Things changed. They made the decision to go with Arcia, who also had a strong spring, and they wanted his experience and that really solid defensive, great arm. And they thought he could hit a lot better right now than Shoemake, clearly, and probably better than Grissom. Well, it did. Arcia did till he got hurt. That decision looked like a wise one. So now, in the meantime, Arcia goes down to AAA, was raking, hitting over 400 down there. Took it the right way, the way teams always hope a guy will being demoted, be an option for AAA. Instead of going down there and sulk and going, I don't belong here. I spent the last 2 months of last year in a big leagues helping that team win a division. I don't belong here. He didn't take it like that. He went down and played his ass off.
It's harder to do that than you think, too. I mean, it's a big blow to go down to AAA after you've tasted the big leagues.
I'm sure it is, man. I mean, And he was here for the playoff stretch, playing in front of packed houses,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And that's got to be tough. You're going to Gwinnett, and all of a sudden you're playing in front of
6 a.m.
5,000
flight.
people. Yeah, and you're playing a 6-game series. Now they have 6-game series everywhere. So, yeah, but he took it well down there, played shortstop down there. And what happens before you know it, one of those
It always
things.
does, it seems like.
RC is off to the best start of his career, signs a 3-year extension, and on opening day is playing great. It looks like, okay, there's no way we see Grissom again this year unless Ozzie gets hurt. What happens? RC gets hurt 2 weeks into the season.
Yeah.
You know,
and that's why it's so important.
fracture.
You know, it's so important to go down there and have a good attitude and stay ready.
Right.
And for some guys, they do that. They have the great attitude, and that call never comes. But the worst thing that could possibly happen in your career is to be just dicking around in AAA, half-assing things. Then you get called up, and you get this opportunity to cement yourself. Because if he plays his ass off, then there's a debate when Arcia gets healthy. What do we do?
Right.
If you come up and suck, it's just as soon as he's healthy, you're going back to AAA.
Right. I think Arcia played too well to lose his position, but I hear what you're saying. If he just rakes, Arcia, remember, is a damn good utility guy. So anything could happen. And they could just move. They're getting Grissom all this development right now. They could even think about putting him at second base or shortstop. I don't think that would happen because they want him to keep playing every day. But anyway, your point's well taken. I mean, it gives them something to think about. And, you know, and we've seen how Ozzie is vulnerable to injuries, freak things, getting hit, plays so hard that he hurts things a lot. So you got Grissom there to call up, play second if you need him. So
having those two guys too on tap, if you feel like Ozzie could use a few days off, Ozzie can DH.
Yeah.
You know,
no doubt.
It's just a nice luxury to have.
Yeah. So Grissom came up, and on Sunday he has the 1-out double in a ninth after a 1-out single after Ozzie had doubled. They got a 2-run homer, I think it was off of Tonkin, and took a lead or tied it up. And then the Braves come right back. Ozzie gets a double. And Ozzie had a little mini resurgence, by the way. That was really welcome by them because he struggled coming out of the gate. And then Grissom steps up and hits a hanging slider. And I love what he did with it. Instead of trying to pull it, he hits an opposite field single up the line, scores Albies with a go-ahead run, and the Braves do it again. And they show how they can win in so many different ways. And this time the kid doing an opposite field hit, showing some development there, some maturity.
And every time they do this, every time they do it, they build momentum knowing they can do it. And as another team, you never let your guard down. But that's more stress on bullpens.
Oh, yeah.
It's more stress. It's the worst thing that happens, for a team's momentum, and especially if you do it early in a series, but it's to get up, take that late lead or tie the game up late, and first guy out of the pen gives it right back. It's like that's a kiss of death for your game. You're losing that game when you give it back like that.
Right.
And they do it so much.
And Snicker said about Grissom, just as a reminder on why they like this guy so much. Remember when he came up last year, homers over the monster in his first game.
Raked.
And hit like 400 the first couple of weeks. The big thing about him is the high OBP and all that, but the bat-to-ball skills are way above average. And that's hard to teach. You got that or you don't. Yeah. So he's got that. So he's going to hit, regardless of what he does defensively in his career. He's going to hit. And Snit said he puts it in play. He'd be a hard guy to defend because he sprays that thing all over, and he's up there swinging. He's aggressive. Puts the ball in play. When you do that, good things can happen. That was big right there.
Yeah, and you'd much rather have that be a guy's, scouting report that he's got these incredible bat-to-ball skills versus, he just has incredible at-bats, but he's kind of limited with his ceiling.
Right.
Grissom can do some damage in the box.
And he's a guy who's probably going to put on 10 more pounds of muscle. He's still so young, and he's got the body, the frame to handle it.
He's going to fill out.
He talked about Grissom. I like the swagger this guy's got, and I like the chip on the shoulder in a good way this guy's got. He's aware of what's being said. He knew what was being said this winter when he was working out with Wash down in New Orleans. Some question is some scouts came out and, through reporters said that they questioned his range, whether he could play defense in the majors. And he hears that kind of thing, and it drives him. Instead of questioning himself, he goes out there to show people that he can do it. And it seems like it's not an act too. He really believes in himself. He's not just trying to convince himself. And he comes up and says, I knew there was still some marinating to be done going down to AAA. I felt good knowing I had done a decent enough job, but you can't just be decent. He said this after the game Sunday or before, and he said it's like about people questioning him. He said that's like every part of every part of every athlete's dream is to prove everyone wrong.
Yeah, and you see guys have their whole career manufacturing that chip on their shoulder.
Right.
There's plenty of guys in the league right now that, they go on some Twitter rant and you just like, dude, nobody's saying you're not going to be an ace.
Right. And coaches say that shit about their team, like the Georgia football coach.
Yeah. It's like, no, everybody knows you're the best. But once they get to that point where everybody's giving them credit, they don't know how to act. They need somebody hating on them. And, for Grissom, it's free right now. He gets free motivation.
Kirby and some of his players coming out and said, nobody expected us to be there. I'm like, what are you talking about, man?
Yeah.
You were ranked number 1 most of the season, man. You were defending national champions.
Yeah, this guy's like, for everybody said I couldn't do this. How you like me now? Like, dude, you're first pick in the draft.
Yeah.
we all thought you could do it.
So Grissom was 4 for 13 with a double, 2 ribbies, and no strikeouts in 3 games in that Kansas City series. And the defense, you alluded to a couple of mistakes. I think one was an error, another wasn't really an error, but it was a mistake. That's early in the first game or in the first game. Yeah. The last 2 games, I thought he played really well. Made a couple of really nice plays. He showed his range, by the way, coming over one time, fielding the ball on the second base side, throwing nice clean throw to first. Yeah, really nice play.
Yeah, and if you even if you're limited, just athletically, and you can't quite move laterally like other shortstops, you can work on little stuff like your reads. You can work on you can work on getting that first step. There's things you can do, but
and that's what Wash is teaching him.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't really know that until you hear the criticism. For me, I remember going into arbitration the first time, and I really hadn't gotten a huge chance to face righties after go through the 2010 season. My whole arbitration case was he can't get righties out. He can't get righties out. And so you go into that season, it's like every time a righty steps in the box, it's the World Series for me.
Yeah.
And I had the best season of my career being told what I couldn't do. And so sometimes that's the kick in the ass you need.
Yeah. And I think, while it may be legitimate, I think a lot of it is scouts see a player in the minor leagues and they never forget their impression of that player. Maybe they saw him in a bad series or whatever. And they just assume that's going to be his MO the rest of the way. Because this guy is not your typical shortstop size, he's bigger. He's like 6'3".
Yeah.
And he's not one of these compact, super quick guys with the feet and boom, the movements. Like he's not Fluky or, or Edgar, these really graceful, really quick. He's an athlete, though. This guy moves well. He's just not super quick. And that's the stuff Wash has been teaching him about getting jumps and instincts and being there to make up for that, in shortfalls, because he does have some real pluses, too. So I'm not going to say he can't play shortstop in the majors. I think he's already done it. He showed that he can do it. Whether it's average or below average, he's does enough with how he is. I think that they can put him there and it's not going to kill him. So, but he might become a lot better than that.
Yeah,
we'll just see over time.
He's young. I mean,
but you want him somewhere.
With hard work, you can get so much better, and especially I think you're so focused on the big things coming up through the minors. You're so focused on making the plays you're supposed to make. You're so focused on your at bats and hitting. Sometimes these things you don't. I mean, you got to perfect the other things before you really have the time to dedicate yourself to them. But once it's brought to your attention, like I got to work on my range, and you're seeing it in the papers and hearing it, you might not even hear that coming through the minors. You might have a couple coaches tell you like, let's get you going to your left better or whatever. But once you actually hear it and scouts are saying it and everybody's saying this is the knock on you, then you're finally driven to say, okay, that's going to be a focal point. I'm going to get my hits in. I know what I need to do in the cage, but I'm focusing and I'm driven this year to get better at that.
Yeah, and he was playing multiple positions in the minors too.
Yeah,
not focused on shortstop like Shoemaker's playing shortstop almost exclusively. And I think most minor league guys, especially if they want the first rounders, they focus on hitting to show people. They know the bat is what's going to stand out and get them to the majors one way or the other. So they focused on hitting.
Yeah, congrats. Your range got 30% better this year, but you hit 241.
Right.
Yeah, you're going back to single A.
And I think ultimately, worst case scenario for this guy, and it's not a bad scenario at all, is worst case, you can move him to left field because he's obviously got the athleticism to play the outfield and play it well.
Yeah.
But if he can
Has
play
he done any of
shortstop-
that?
No, he hasn't. He hasn't, but they've talked about it, but they haven't done it yet. I'm not aware that they've worked him out there at all, but they have discussed it. It's been discussed. It's just that they don't want to distract him right now.
Right.
If a guy can play shortstop, long term.
No, you gotta try everything you can to make that happen because it's a lot more valuable position.
But now that they've got Arcia signed for a 3-year deal, I think that's one of those things that if they decide Arcia is better suited for shortstop than a utility role, and if he plays like he did the first 2 weeks, they will.
He's playing like that for 2.5.
Then you will, I think, look for a way to keep Grissom in the big leagues, and outfield could obviously be it because they don't have anybody there long term.
Yeah.
All right, good problems to have. Braves start a big series tonight here in San Diego. Stay up late, brew that coffee after you get off work. Those late East Coast starts, 3 of them.
My kids will be in bed when this game starts, so it's nice for me when they're on the West Coast.
All right. We appreciate it, everybody. 7:55 is real. We are out.